and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm thrilled as always to be here with you. I've just come off an hour and a bit chat with Mr. Clyde Lawrence. I know I tend to go into a bit of hyperbole with all our guests, although I'm sincere about all of it because we have amazing guests. But Clyde is part of a band called Lawrence, and that although that's only one part of what he does in his musical career, Lawrence, the band, is the reason that my brother-in-arms, Paul Bindig, suggested I go and see Lawrence live, which I did earlier this year when they toured Australia. And from that moment onwards, seeing Clyde in action and the band in action, I had to talk to Clyde. As you'll hear, what an amazing band. They're an 8-piece that have been through a lot together since 2013, and they're really only kicking off, I'd argue. They probably don't feel it after 13 years. They're well and truly down the track, but I can only see a huge amount of success in their future as well. So we talked to Clyde about Lawrence, the band, his film and TV work, and a whole bunch more. I think you'll enjoy this one a great deal, and I'll talk to you after the show. Clyde, I cannot thank you enough for joining us, sir. You've had one hell of a year, and I appreciate you fit us in.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I thought we might start with the year you've had so far, and then we'll go back a little bit. So you've already been to Australia and New Zealand. You've already done a lot of Europe, and you've got about 50 shows or close to 50 shows coming up for the rest of the year. How are you keeping busy?
The beginning of the year was very busy with our first Australia leg ever. We did a Europe leg, and all of that's part of our band Lawrence is on the Family Business tour. Our album is called Family Business. We did a Europe leg last year and a North American leg. And then January we did Australia and February Europe. So it's been 4 legs so far, and we've been pretty much touring straight. And then we have the final 2 legs planned for later in the year, but I actually have an unusually long break right now because my sister Gracie, who's the co-lead singer with me, she is making her Broadway musical debut right now. So she's about to be one of the stars of an exciting new Broadway show, and so she'll be doing that for the next several months. So I'll be hanging in New York, making some new music, and got a bunch of exciting projects. Definitely staying extremely busy. I thought I wasn't going to be that busy, and it turns out that I'm very busy. But a combination of some different projects, some Lawrence stuff, some working on other stuff, just so many different random little things. I feel like it's going to fly by, and I'm going to be back on tour before I know it.
Absolutely. And I want to ask a little bit about the touring, because I think it's fair to say, Clyde, I know you had a tour cancelled due to COVID, that this would have been the biggest series of shows you've done consecutively since 2013. Just tell us about psychologically how you're getting through those, and physically too. What have been the learnings for you with this larger scale tour?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably the longest stretch, although we've pretty much we've toured a lot our whole career since we started. We graduated from college, and then for the last many years, we've been, other than COVID, just touring really consistently. And frankly, the funny thing about touring is that as you get bigger, the lifestyle of it gets more comfortable. So even if maybe you're correct that the number of shows we're doing now is as much or more than we've ever done, at least for me, it feels a little bit easier, even though I'm a few years older. So maybe I'm not as, limber as I once was. I'm still pretty young, and certainly compared to when we were on our first couple of tours, we were packing in a full van and, sleeping on couches or sleeping in the van most nights. Then we graduated to sharing hotel rooms, 4 people to a room in the crappiest hotel in town. So as we have been lucky enough to get bigger and have both venues with better kind of amenities and accommodations and just more, financial flexibility to have a tour bus and all of those things, I really enjoy it. I like touring. I think it's really fun. And, it's a unique scenario because for us in the band, this isn't a group of musicians that Gracie and I hired. This is truly every single person in the band, no exceptions, is like a friend from a point in childhood, whether that be some of them I've known since I was like 5, some of them middle school, high school, college. But so it's really like on a road trip with friends. It's obviously challenging physically and mentally sometimes, but I really enjoy it. But everyone has their own different relationship with it in the band. I would
Yeah.
say that I enjoy it. And I'd say that most of us really enjoy it.
And that enjoyment's obvious. And I want to come back to the energy thing a little bit down the track, but let's go a little bit back about to the formation of the band. So I'm going to link in our show notes to your amazing docuseries. So you yourself
Oh,
do a
great.
wonderful job of covering the history of how it formed. But just for people that haven't heard or seen you before, just a potted history of your musical upbringing and then the formation of Lawrence, the band, that would be hugely appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that about the documentary. Shout out to these guys, Guy and James from Vagabonding Media, because it's really they filmed and produced and directed the whole thing. And they did an amazing job. But yeah, I mean, basically, Gracie and I grew up playing music together in our childhood home all the time. We come from a, family of creative people. Our dad is a filmmaker, our mom is a dancer and a dance teacher. So I feel like talking about art, talking about creativity, talking about storytelling, both our own and, other songs we were hearing or movies we were watching or whatever was very much a part of our lives and it's very second nature to us. So Gracie and I were like both thinking about that stuff and doing it and taking it really seriously from an early age. And we have a younger brother, Linus, who's quite a bit younger, but he is also a very creative person. Um, so there was a lot of that happening in our own home. And then, just started playing together all the time, but then also with some, friends of ours that were very talented when I was maybe about 6 years old, I think, and Gracie was maybe 2. We met a neighbor of ours named Jordan, who was a saxophone player, and we became like best friends. But also, we were constantly playing music together. And I never really had a true formal music education. Like I had a music teacher that I took private lessons with, who was awesome named Nick Scarum in New York, but it was kind of a bit of a like it wasn't the typical play your scales type of thing. I never went to music school. So I think like between a few key people in my life and Jordan being one of them, that was like, a big part of my own musical education was like talking about, oh, why does this chord feel like it leads to this chord and just having those conversations with friends or peers. And then yeah, met our buddy Sam in middle school, and he was a drummer. We were in middle school jazz band together, and I played piano and he played drums. And then when I went to college, Sam and I both went to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, which is not a music school. Although there's a lot of just very creative and artistically interested people there and we met the other 4 guys in the band. Sam introduced me to several of them because he's older. So when I got to Brown, he was already in school there. And so he had kind of, I think he had sort of told some people at school, like his friend Johnny, who's a guitarist, and maybe a couple other people, like, oh, my friend Clyde, who's a really good musician, is coming to Brown next year. He'll be a freshman and he's got all these original songs and he's going to want me to play in his band and you should meet him and blah, blah, blah. So Sam had kind of set the table a little bit for me in a way that was probably not totally intentional, but was awesome. So that when I got there, I met all these people and we kind of formed this band. So yeah, long story, I guess kind of long. All of us, all 8 of us, this has been the exact same group of 8 people that we've been playing with since we were playing literally like basement parties at Brown University back in college, playing frankly some of the same music that we play now, songs that are on our album. Certainly all of the music from my first EP, Homesick, are like, that came out while I was in college. So that was like our record. But then even though Breakfast, our first album as a band, and Living Room, our second album as a band, came out in the years after, some of those songs were songs that we were playing, in those college parties. We just hadn't recorded them yet. So though that really was the genesis of Lawrence in terms of not only the band members, but the original music itself that we were playing. So it was kind of a natural progression. When we graduated, we just decided to try to hit the road and see if we could make something happen. And we were lucky enough to, you know, be able to build this kind of grassroots following that was very pretty organic, honestly. Like there wasn't some big overnight success. We certainly put out music videos, we played shows, we put out songs, and people seemed to like them, but it wasn't like it was before TikTok even existed. It wasn't like some overnight situation. It was truly our first tour. We all got in the van and we were lucky. We considered it a good night if there was 40, 50 people at the venue, and a bad night if there was 10, and that wasn't uncommon. Um, and then the next tour, maybe it was 50 to 100 people. And then the next tour was 100 to 200 people. And then literally it was just that over and over until now, you know, it's anywhere from, a couple thousand to 6,000 people. But it's the same general, same crew, same vibe, same spirit. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got to ask, and this is a question I emphasize, Clyde, we ask a lot of artists that do a lot of touring. It's a really difficult thing, touring, as far as just even, as a group, staying cohesive across a long tour. And I think you've already given away the secret why you've managed to do that you've known each other a long time and worked together. But no matter how cohesive a group, there'll always be the little arguments and other downsides. What are the ways that you do try and keep it as cohesive as possible across a grueling tour?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our band is very unusual in the way that it's structured because all 8 of these people have been involved in it from the beginning. So everyone has a ton of investment in it, and no one in the band is like, no one in the band is getting paid by the gig. Everyone in the band is like in it to win it. And at the same time, no one in the band is part of like 10 different bands. Everyone like this is their thing. At the same time, I think that like hopefully like any good company or any good community really of any kind, there is some form of leadership and organization. I think that some bands, because it's like an artistic endeavor, think that to be in a 8 people's a lot, but say it's a 5-person band or an 8-person band, whatever it is, they think, oh, we're a 5-person band. So every single thing that we do should be a vote among 5 people and 3 votes to win on every decision. And every different area of the band, like all of us are going to be in charge of all of it because we're a team and we're a community, and that's what's fair. And I think that that's not exactly how our band functions. Like, I think that there's some ways in which there's some amount of clear creative leadership from me and Gracie because, the band name is our last name and we're the 2 lead singers and we do the majority of the songwriting, although not 100% of it. But at the same time, operationally, other people in the band have areas that they really take ownership of and are really in charge of and do a great job with. And I think that, yeah, to answer your question of like how we make it function well, I think a lot of it is about setting up it to be like a real functioning organization where everyone has a ton of buy-in, but there's also structure to it.
Yeah, and the structure's incredibly perceptive, Clyde. Did you have good management guidance early on, or just because of your family growing up in the industry or whatever? Because there are a lot of bands that make all the mistakes that you've avoided to some extent around structure, creativity, and whatever. What got you on the right path so early on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I would say I never grew up around bands. Um, so there wasn't an exact analog to look at, but I certainly admired the way that I saw my dad dealing with people on movie sets that he was in charge of. So I think I probably observed and took a lot of really good lessons in like being the organizational leader of like a creative endeavor from watching that. So there's definitely an extent of that, but I also think that part of it is just about like having a group of people that get along and have different skill sets, just like try to form systems. I'm a pretty I don't know if I'd consider myself a type A person, but I'm a person. I definitely believe that like good systems can really help make the world go around. So like, I definitely think that like, you know, all these little things that bands get tripped up about, like, oh, like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of a random example. There's creative ones of like, oh, what if I have a mix note that someone else doesn't have? Like, what do we do about that? Or like operational things, like if I live further than you from the airport, so my Ubers to the airport for every gig costs more, like, do we both, am I having to pay for that or are you, or should we split it and blah, blah, blah? You know, like all of these questions and so many more we have answers to and we've discussed them. We have like our own little band constitution of like how we do things. And if someone makes a good point about, I actually think that this way is not fair, then we amend it, then we adjust it.
And I mean this in a praiseworthy way, Clyde, not in a mocking way. Do you have a policy and procedure manual?
We don't really have a policy and procedure manual exactly, but I do have like notes on a big band meeting that will be referenced, that will be like, if you are late to the airport and therefore you need to take a Uber that you would have split with someone else. You like, I do. We probably do. We probably should make a manual because we have all of the materials about like what the systems we've created are written in a set of different notes and emails and places that and Google Docs that I reference all the time. So we probably should have a manual is probably the answer. We have all the materials to make one.
No, I think that's amazing discipline. And for those that haven't seen Lawrence live, there's no risk of this sort of business stuff overlapping onto stage as far as stifling creativity. As I said in the introduction, Clyde, I had the pleasure of seeing you live this year, and what I saw was nothing short of a stunning performance. And I know I've seen from around the world, you never fail to deliver on that. So I wanted to
Yeah.
come back to the energy. So um, on an average gig day, like most bands, you spend 23 hours waiting around or 22 hours waiting around and a couple of hours playing. What's your routine? And then particularly regards to you as a piano player that plays his butt off for a 2 hour gig, let alone the singing that you have to do. How do you approach a gig day?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like being busier on a gig day because to your point, it can be, so monotonous. A lot of the people in the band, not as much me, have a lot of like actual responsibilities that normally band members wouldn't have towards preparing for the gig. Like one guy in the band is actually our tour manager, one guy in the band is our production manager, so on and so forth. I don't have as many things like that because I think it would be hard for me to have that because some days I have like a full day of press before the gig. So for that reason, it would be hard for me to have any like super mission critical day of show responsibilities relating to setting up the gig. But I like to like have a full day of stuff to do. So like if I don't have anything like press or meetings or whatever it might be, I'll try to do something on my computer, catch up on emails. I try to stay busy with like busy worky stuff that I need to do. And then I like to always like try to take a moment to take a little walk somewhere because you can spend so much time you can spend so little time outside while you're on tour. That's a really important thing is like to get ideally like a little bit of sunlight at some point during the day. And then, I mean, I don't really have like a specific routine. I like to just stay busy. I like to like not spend too much time thinking about getting into show mode. Like I like my experience on stage to be an extension of my day. I like to remain in my, sweatpants and t-shirt until just a few minutes before the show. And I don't have like a big warm up regimen. I certainly have things that I try to do for self care. Like I like to take really warm showers for my voice or like drink tea and things like that. But yeah, I try to keep it really loose and just let it be like I had a phone call with this person and then now I'm walking out on stage and playing a 2 hour show.
And let's talk a little bit about your actual keyboard playing, Clyde. So, I mean, on a typical show, you're from memory, and I apologize if I've gotten this wrong, but you play a lot of piano. You do play
Yeah.
some organ and other stuff on the noise. Tell us a bit about your keyboard rig and what you're actually covering across the show.
Yeah. So I use a Nord stage and I do something that probably a lot of keyboard players would consider blasphemy, but I'd like to think I do a pretty decent job of it, which is combining organ and other patches at the same time. Um, so 90% of the show exists on one of three patches. So I have, um, a piano, or I really have I have three different piano presets. And then I have two different electric piano presets. And then I have a clav, like a funky clav preset. And I can combine up to two of those. Like I basically have it that all my patches are one of those, but with other ones behind it. So I could have like the clav and the piano, or the clav and the Rhodes, or the clav and the Whirly. But it's just these three pianos, two electric pianos, and one clav. And because I personally don't want it to be like, oh, I have a different patch for every song. At least right now, I like the feeling of like, it feels a little more organic or real, even though I'm playing a keyboard that could have a different patch for every song. I like the feeling that, oh, I've got a piano here, and I like even my three different piano sounds are basically the same. It's just one of them has like a bunch of reverbs on it and whatever. Um, but then for all of those sounds, I have organ, the same organ patch, also permanently on, but connected to an expression pedal. So, and if I have that expression pedal at 0%, it's like there's no organ. I'm just playing piano. But then I can layer in the organ, and I've gotten pretty good at, like, most keyboard players that I tell about that, they're like, oh, that's going to sound bad, like layering in organ, like, but you're not going to be able to like play independent things with the organ and the knot. And I've gotten like, it's almost part of the instrument for me. I've gotten really good and really fast at like adjusting the organ, changing the drawbars, changing the octave of the organ during the song, turning off the piano in the middle of a thing. Also, like, I have a really good feel for like certain velocities. Like if you hit it really light, you'll only get the organ through. But then if you jack up the volume on the organ pedal, it'll still come out really loud on the organ. So anyway, all that being said, I'm doing some combination of piano, clav, electric piano, and organ, and I'm often doing three of those things at the same time using my Nord.
And look, it works extremely well. And obviously, you have the beautiful luxury too of an amazing brass section and everything else on stage with you, which it
Yeah.
just fleshes it out stunningly well. So, working up songs for tour, Clyde, I mean, obviously, my assumption, and please challenge this, is that the way you record in the studio, I'm sure there are overdubs and stuff, but I'm guessing a lot of it is physical in the studio stuff, and that the way you prepare songs for tour probably isn't a lot different to the way you've recorded stuff in the studio. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
It's actually pretty different than that. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that some people think that, but it's pretty different than that. For a couple reasons. A lot of it is that process wise, like I and Gracie and the rest of the gang have not necessarily fully written songs when we're beginning to record them. So like we're very rarely all getting together and being like, here's a finished song, here's everyone's part. Also, sometimes I need to hear like 20 different versions of a horn part before I know which one is the right one. So like now knowing how the song goes, if I now needed to record the studio version of it, I might do it more like the way you're describing. But like when we record, a horn part, and there's an open slot in one of our songs where we know we need a great riff, I might have the horns we might all come up with 20 different ideas of parts, and then we listen back later and pick the best ones. Or we might be like, oh my God, it's actually the first note from this one, but then it's the rest of this one. So it's actually quite not live necessarily. It's a lot of live instruments, but it's not a group of us getting together and playing it together necessarily. So it's partially because of the songwriting process where like we just haven't fully figured out what the song is. And that happens over the course of the months in the studio. The second one is just like a factor of space. We have our own little studio in Brooklyn, and like we just don't have room to record everyone at the same time in it. And we of course could like book out a big studio, but it's very nice to not feel like you're on the clock. So what we prefer to do is like do a lot of most of our work in this small space where we could only record at most a couple instruments at the same time. Or yeah, and then like once we know, oh, we want to do a full day with drums and bass and piano, then we book a couple days in like a big studio and go in and do that. So we try to walk the line between like the old school live instrumentation recording method and sort of the new school sitting in front of a laptop programming things method.
No, that's great. Thank you. I mean, rehearsing up for a tour, I mean, even now you've done so many shows over the last year for your current tour, you've got a couple of months break. What will be the process when you're going back out in a couple of months? Is it a day or two's rehearsals, or how does it tend to work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we usually do a big chunk of rehearsing leading into a whole new album cycle. So, and it's partially because of what I was just talking about, which is that contrary to what you thought, the tour is actually often the first time that we are all playing these songs together. So going into this family business tour, which the first leg of which was in July in Europe, we did like a full, probably 5 full days of getting together as a band, learning all of the songs from this album. And not only learning them, but figuring out how we were going to make them work because there's tons of, I mean, you can go to a website that me and our guitarist Johnny actually created called splitter.fm, and you can hear the stems of all of our songs. Like, there's no way, even with an 8-piece band, that there's full string sections, there's 10-part vocal choiry things, and even drums wise, there's so much percussion. There's often, you know, many different keyboard layers, synths, and all of the above. So a lot of it's like creativity in the rehearsal studio of saying, there's this string line. Should I try to like play that string line on my keyboard? Should Johnny try to do some of it on his guitar? Should we incorporate it into the horn line? A lot, or like percussion wise, like Sam, how are you going to adjust what you're playing to adapt from what the studio version is to the not? So, that's a really creative process, and we kind of do all of that leading up to the tour. My guess is that going into the next leg of tour, the set list will be like similar but different, but maybe a little different. But I bet we won't have to do almost any rehearsal for it. Like, I bet we'll do almost none, maybe one rehearsal. At this point, like, we have probably hundreds of songs that we could whip out. So it's really only when we're like dialing in a whole new body of work that we really need to sit down and have like a lot of rehearsal time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And last band question before we move on to the film and TV stuff, Clyde. But there's obviously the difference between the musical components of the show and actually having a show that the audience love. And you managed to pull off both parts of that. And one thing that I loved, and I'm fully prepared to admit, at risk of your lawyers, I've ripped it off in my own little cover band, weekend band, is the audience choosing two songs, or in your case, getting your pre-show meet and greet guests to choose two deeper cuts, and then you giving the audience the choice of which of those deeper cuts they'd like to hear played on the night. That's the stuff that makes a show great. And was that just experience, Chloe? You just worked through and thought, how do we make this even more fun?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we like interactivity. If you've been to a Lawrence show, we ask you to do a lot of singing. We like to have fun games and activities and things like that. We also, at this point, have a really deep catalog, and we like to flex the fact that, not to throw shade at other bands that are in the pop music space, because, we kind of walk the line between being a pop band and maybe not a pop band. But I think that like most pop bands play with a heavy amount of backing tracks. They maybe don't have as deep of a discography ready to just play immediately because any number of reasons. Either the hired band for that tour doesn't know the back catalog, or the musicianship isn't there, or whatever it might be. And so I think like for us, we like to demonstrate that we are a real band that has the flexibility to play any song from our catalog, and that that's something that we actually enjoy doing and find refreshing, and that our set list isn't as rigid as some other pop concerts that you might go to. So we like to do that as much as we can. And as we have more and more of a discography, we want to do more of it because, there's so much music that we don't have time to play. And when we only had 2 albums out, we couldn't do some fun lottery about what songs we were going to play because we only had enough time in the set. We only had enough songs to play pretty much every one of our songs. So, we did a tour a few years ago that was really fun where we realized that we had like 50 plus covers that we knew really well from our days as a college band, and that we had all these really fun arrangements of them, but a lot of them we hadn't played since we were a college band. And so we did this really fun game where we had like a big bag of like balls that you would find in like a children's ball pit, and they all had different songs written on them from people. Fans would write songs on them and put them in the ball pit. So then we would like grab a random one out and then throw that into the audience and play the song. And we really had a lot of fun doing that. We just always liked doing things like that. So yeah, for this tour, we figured we have 4 albums. We're going to play almost every song from our new album. So as you said, during the pre-show VIP event, we had a competition between the different people that were at the VIP event, and the winners got to pick one song from each of our first 3 albums that we weren't planning on playing. And then we let the audience vote between those 3 songs. We love doing stuff like that. We also we threw our own festival a couple of years ago where we did 3 nights of completely non-repeating set lists. So we played over 60 songs across the 3 nights. We love playing music, and it's fun to play different songs every night.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. That's just superb. And I understand, for the sake of our listeners and viewers, I understand that's not a totally original concept, and I know, Clyde, you wouldn't be claiming it is. I mean, Elvis Costello used to have a spinning wheel, but it's just great to me.
That's totally no. I would credit him with that inspiration for sure. Yeah, the spinning wheel tour is like the coolest thing.
Yeah,
And
loved it.
Ben Folds has the paper airplanes.
That's true.
That's a really cool one. And, it's maybe not the same thing, but, if you go to see a band like Fish or something, like they're going to play, I think they did, and I'm not super well versed in that world, but I respect like the fact that I think they did like 13 nights in Madison Square Garden and didn't repeat a song the entire
Wow.
time. And I just think like that is a really cool concept because you are providing a way for your biggest fans to like really take a deep dive with you at your live show.
Absolutely. No, brilliant. Now, I definitely want to talk about your film and TV work, Clyde, and you've been quoted yourself as saying that you love doing that sort of work because it makes you leave your ego at the door. So how does your TV or film work scratch a different itch or free you up musically in different ways to do what you like to do creatively?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm working on Lawrence, I'm like totally in control of every aspect of what the final product is going to be. And like, there's no larger project that the music is serving. The music is the project. And there's something kind of fun about playing a more supporting role in an operation. Like, there's something really fun about making music for something where the project itself has so many moving parts, and you can work with and collaborate with someone who you really trust, a great director or whatever it might be, for them to say, here's how you can really help me. Here's what you can make that can support this thing. So like on a pure like working level, there's something very fun about when I think most people who spend a lot of their life working for someone else crave working for themselves. But for someone like me who spends 90% of my time being like, I can make whatever song I want, and that's really great, but it also is like, whatever. It's kind of fun to work for someone, especially if you really respect them and work at their direction of how can I make something that's going to help you create your thing, to the best, be the best that it can be. So on that level, it's fun. And then musically, yeah, it just allows me to do different types of things. I mean, I think Lawrence luckily can be a lot of different things. We have so many different kinds of songs. So it's not like Lawrence can only be this one thing, but certainly like the ability to make pieces of music for all different kinds of movies or TV shows or things like that. It's just like a really fun way to be versatile and to flex that muscle and to like do wacky, fun, cool pieces of music that I probably wouldn't have had an occasion to make for myself. I also think that it's just fun to make music for a visual thing because like so often music in life is paired with an activity or another thing. Even the music that I make, the Lawrence music that I make, I think there's plenty of people that are hopefully just like sitting down and listening to it. But for a lot of people, it's the soundtrack to their lives. It's the song that's on while they're in the car driving down the highway. It's the song that they are listening to while they're having a drink with their friend. Like music, even that you make as an artist, is a soundtrack for something. But while I'm in the studio making it, I can only imagine what it's a soundtrack for. So even though I can imagine while making a song, oh, this would sound great to someone who's driving down the highway with the windows down. Like when I'm scoring a movie, if the scene is showing someone driving down the highway with the windows down, I get to actually make the music that pairs perfectly with that moment.
And does it scratch a different itch too, Clyde, as far as you've talked about type of music, but I mean, obviously your music with Lawrence is so, I don't like, I'm a cynical old bastard. I don't like using the words like joyous and stuff, but it's such joyous, amazing, positive music. Whereas in film and TV, have you had the opportunity to do some darker stuff? I know a lot of your credits are, not necessarily darker movies, but yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, some. I would say that like there's like the self-fulfilling prophecy of like a lot of people that have asked me to make music for things are like asking me because of what they think I'm likely to make. But yeah, I've definitely gotten to make some like stuff that feels, I don't know if dark is the right word, but like, yeah, very different, dramatically like in your face joyous than a lot of the Lawrence music is. And I'd like to think that there's a lot of stuff even within the Lawrence discography that isn't necessarily as I think our most popular songs are often the ones that are the most upbeat and joyous. But there are plenty of, I mean, there's literally a song on our album called Funeral that's just a piano ballad about what it would be like attending your own funeral. So that one's
Right.
pretty dark. And, we have a few songs like that on most of our albums. But yeah, no, I love doing that stuff. I mean, I'm working right now, just starting work on like a indie horror movie, for example. Like
Nice.
that's like super fun. And frankly, like some of the sounds that would be used for something like that are things that make their way into some Lawrence songs. Like in the background of Lawrence songs, you'll hear like crazy sound effects and things like that. But like the way you can feature them when you're doing a score is different. But aside of darkness as something that's a little different than what we might do in the Lawrence thing, it's like even the total opposite direction, which is like I've gotten to make music for like orchestral children's cartoons, which as joyous and quirky as Lawrence is, even Lawrence doesn't approach the level of like fun and silliness of some of the fun projects I've gotten to do in that realm. So it kind of hits all the different ends of the spectrum.
And I have to ask a keyboard related question there. When you're working up stuff for film and TV, I understand 95% of that's now done remotely, except for sort of the really, really big movies. Sometimes you might get an orchestral staging day and so on. What are you using at home as far as plug-in synths, soft synths, whatever it is to pull off what you need to?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough to do most of the projects that I've done that are heavily orchestral have ultimately been recorded with a full actual
Right.
orchestra, which is awesome. But certainly a lot of the mocking up of that stuff is done. Yeah, we just have like so many MIDI. I don't even know off the top of my head, but
That's
like
okay.
so many of like the, you know, the MIDI libraries that have like the great string things. Uh, I know we were using like a lot of Spitfire stuff for one project, and I honestly am like forgetting the names of some of
No,
the
that's okay.
brands. I can envision the interfaces in my head, but yeah, we have all kinds of string and woodwind libraries and all that jazz. And outside of the traditional ones, there's just so many fun synth patches and like one of my shout out to like I think it's Spitfire makes this thing called Labs that I'm going to look up whether
Yes.
that's
I
Spitfire
think
Labs.
you're right. I think it is
Yeah,
Spitfire Labs.
Spitfire Labs. They just release, I think it's like every week or something, just like a new free sound that's always like this weird, cool, random, cool, weird sound. And like, I love Spitfire Labs. I use it so much in my film scoring stuff. And like a shout out also so I do most of the film scoring with either my buddy Cody Fitzgerald, who's an awesome composer, producer, or with Jordan Cohen from the band, from Lawrence. So, and they, in those roles, I know a decent amount about production. I'm certainly a producer, but they are often the ones actually crafting the sonic landscapes of what is being worked on. So credit to them for, you know, dialing in all of those sounds, whether it's MIDI or whatever it is.
Great, thank you. And I've just been aware of time. I'm just interested, are there particular highlights in the film or TV genres that have stood out for you so far? And I do need you to briefly cover off, your 5-year-old Miss Congeniality theme song anecdote, if you don't mind. But other highlights
Yeah.
for you across all the movies and TV pieces you've done?
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned this, but like I certainly got an earlier start professionally in this aspect of my career than like in the band side of things because my dad is a filmmaker. I've been able to work with him a number of times. So I've done music for his stuff since I was a little kid and up until still now. He's, my favorite person to work with. I love working with him. So I've done music for a bunch of his projects, and that's always such a blast. And everything from like wrote the theme song for Miss Congeniality when I was a very very young child, but more recently like did the full soundtrack for this Disney movie Noelle, which was like such a fun combination of things because it was a Christmas movie and a Disney movie, and really got to like I don't know. I love Christmas music. I love Disney music. To combine both of those and film music and kind of try to do something a little bit different in our own flavor. I highly recommend anyone who's like a fan of Lawrence to listen to the Noel soundtrack, including all of the instrumental score that Cody Fitzgerald and I did. It's some of like my proudest thing. But then, yeah, outside of the stuff I've done with my dad, there's been a ton of fun stuff. Jordan and I did a bunch of the songs for Animaniacs, the latest reboot of it, which was really, really fun. Like the craziest, wackiest song assignments. We would just get told, oh, can you write a song in the style of a 70s funk song from the perspective of Genghis Khan? Can you write a song about, you know, the history of everything that's ever happened in science in the world in this, like just these crazy prompts where it's like, yes, that sounds so fun. So that was really fun. And I mean, a recent one that just wrapped up is Cody and I did the score for the latest project from this awesome director named Cooper Rife. And it's a show called Hal and Harper, starring himself and Mark Ruffalo and Lily Reinhart and
Wow.
a bunch of other really awesome actors. And it just premiered at Sundance. So that's kind of a different vibe than things you might hear in the Lawrence
Yeah.
universe. It's like more of like a indie. I don't even know how to describe the show or the music, but it's kind of like somewhere between drama and comedy, and the music is just all these really like warm sort of flavors that were really really fun and like really fun to make. So those have been some highlights. Working on a couple fun projects right now that I probably can't talk about all of the
No.
details of, but yeah, I love doing that stuff and fitting it in whenever.
And speaking of fitting things whenever you can, Clyde, I know you tease on your own website that you may or may not be writing the book music and lyrics for a stage musical. Is that something, I understand you probably can't say much, but is that something that's still an ongoing project for you?
Yeah, there's a couple different iterations of that are kind of bouncing around in our world over here. Yeah, the short answer is yes. There are like steps being taken towards that. If you know anyone who does that kind of thing, they'll tell you it takes a very, very long time, and the percentage of projects that start getting worked on is much larger than the percentage that get finished. So
Right.
I don't have a timeline or any promises, but it's definitely something that we want to do. And it's definitely something that there's actually like multiple different projects that are being
Explored.
hopefully getting some momentum towards happening.
No, great. Looking forward to that. We'll just move on to a couple of our standard questions, Clyde. And the first
Yeah.
one is our tag a keyboard player question. So we ask all of our great guests to tag another person that they admire who may play as well, that they'd like to hear more about their story.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a shout in terms of like keyboard players that I'm friends with and always admire their playing intensely. Our buddy Devin Yesberger is absolutely awesome. Highly recommend you chatting with him
Right.
and he's the man. If you watch our acoustic videos, he's in almost all of them, and he's just like a keyboard player that I always love jamming with because it's so rare that you get to jam with other keyboard players. Another one is my friend Bryn Bliska, who is an amazing keyboard player, and she has been on tour with Jacob Collier, Maggie Rogers, whole bunch of different people. But actually, she went to college with all of us in the band, so like she has been part of our sort of Lawrence music community since before any of us were professionals, and she is an absolute badass. So those are two
Great.
keyboard players that come to mind in terms of like people that I consider not only like keyboard players that I really admire, but just like people that I've been friends with for years and years now.
Yeah.
So those are two really awesome people that you should definitely get in touch with.
No, great picks. Thank you. And I did forget to ask you about an onstage train wreck. Has something ever gone spectacularly wrong for you, Clyde, that you can look back now and laugh about it?
Great question. I'd say yes, for sure. I mean, there's a combination of like technical error and human error examples that come to mind. Um, Certainly like, the fun thing about not playing to tracks and the fun thing about hopefully the reputation we've built with our fans is that like we just are a group of real people playing on stage. So like if things go wrong or if we mess something up royally, then like, then that's life. That's rock and roll. It is what it is. I mean, we had a show on this past tour where all of the power to half of the stage went out during the show. So we lost like over half of the microphones and half of the instruments and everything. And because we have a pretty small crew and a lot of it is our band, literally me and Gracie just grabbed an acoustic guitar and a couple mics from the side of the stage that were working. And we just played like 3 songs acoustically for the audience while the rest of our band and our crew were just on stage trying to figure everything out because they couldn't get the power back. I think it was actually wasn't the power. I think it was a full set of the inputs. So they
Wow.
needed to like reroute the entire stage. So that was kind of crazy. Yeah, I mean, certainly dating back to college, we had we had so many shows in which that were broken up by the cops or that, somebody spilled beer all over my keyboard or that one of us was maybe had a few too many drinks or whatever it might have been. I mean, we really like when you imagine like the crowdest, sweatiest, most fun college basement gig, like that was our bread and butter for years and years. So there's more stories than I can even recount.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And then we've got the Desert Island Disc question, Clyde. So 5 albums. If you have to go to a desert island, which 5 are you taking?
Wow. Let's see. I will just rattle it off. I mean, I would think that I would have to go with Abbey Road,
Yep.
Sail Away by Randy Newman. I'm looking up like track lists right now. Certainly something Stevie Wonder, but I'm having trouble deciding between like songs in the key of life versus something earlier. I love like Signed Seals Delivered, like those early records, like that album is, I feel like most people, when they talk about like the best Stevie Wonder era, talk about like the songs in the key of life and Talking Book and all of that. But I love the early stuff too. So let's see. There's those, maybe Tapestry by Carole
Nice.
King. Let's go with something modern. One of my favorite, or two others that just came to mind are, this is less modern, but more modern than all the other ones I just said. Whatever and Ever Amen by Ben Folds Five
Oh, yeah.
and Gumbo by PJ Morton. He's
Nice.
like one of my favorite current artists. And that Gumbo record is like probably my most listened to album that has come out in the last 10 years.
Great. You get 6, Clyde. I'm happy with that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, they're great picks. And our last question, Clyde, is what we call a quick fire 10. So 10 short and sharp answers to some very short questions. So first album you heard that you recall making a big impact on you growing up?
The song Take Me to the Pilot by Elton John. I remember
Ah,
hearing that song and being like, I get it. This is like exactly what I want to do. Like hearing like it was piano and it was upbeat, but it was like had so much energy. I feel like people think of piano as like whatever, but I heard that and I was like, that is like hits me right in whatever part of my chest that I want to make music that is like that.
Great answer. Most important pre-gig ritual. What do you need to do to feel settled before a show?
Great question. I kind of like to like jump up and down a handful of times.
It works. If you
Yeah.
hadn't been a musician, Clyde, what do you think your career choice would have been?
Probably something in the world of like solving puzzles, but I'm not sure whether I mean that in the sense of like games and crossword puzzles or like
Serial killer hunter.
science or something like that. I really love science and I love puzzles and I love like playing games and stuff, but I also, whenever I hear about like scientists working on something really exciting, I get like really jealous and I'm like, oh, in another life, I would have loved to like help try to figure that out.
There you go. Love it. If it's possible, the favorite tour you've ever done over the last sort of 12 years.
I mean, they've all been great. I think that this latest tour, the family business tour, has been the most exciting because it's the first time in our career that we've really been able to like bring people a full show that's about so much more than just the music. Even though we try to keep it being about the music, there are, there's, with this whole family business concept, we're able to almost have it be like a fun little there's a narrative to it and it's so seamless with what our band is all about. It feels like we're able to, in one show, not only have you understand what our music is all about, but have you understand who we are all about as people too. So I'd say that that's the most fun tour, but the most fun live experience I think has probably been that 3 night festival where we did the non-repeating set list that
Yeah.
I told you about. That was called
Yeah.
Staycation and we're hoping to do another one at some point.
To save you a lot of stress, Clyde, I'll take that as your answer to the next one, which was the favorite gig. We'll say that 3 nights in a row was your
Yeah,
favorite
that
gig.
3 nights at Brooklyn Steel in New York, staycation. We did 3 nights of themes. The first night was wedding themed. The second night was Y2K, so like early 2000s. And the third night was New York, New York. So we did a bunch of New York related songs, songs by New York artists, Broadway songs, and we had different outfits, different stage designs, sorry about that, different merch, all kinds of different fun stuff every night. That was such a blast and definitely, I think, my favorite gigs we've ever done.
Great. And it can be a cover, doesn't have to be one of yours, but name a song that you used to love, but you've played it to death now.
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, it would have to be one of our own songs. I feel like I don't really get bored of songs that
Great.
I love necessarily. I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that
No,
one.
that's okay. That's good.
I'm not so, I tend to not be like, oh, I used to love that song and now I don't. I just keep adding to the list of
Great.
songs that I love.
Yeah, no, that's just as good an answer as any. Favorite music documentary or movie?
Oh, wait, one answer on your last question.
Yeah.
I still love this song and I think it's like the greatest song of all time. But I made the mistake in like high school of making I Want You Back by the Jackson 5 my phone alarm when I wake up. And then I love that song. And I was like, what a perfect song because you can't not be happy when you hear the beginning of that song. And then after like 2 weeks, because I'm a really late night person, I hate waking up in the morning. I started to like grow so resentful of the song because it was the sound of like me having to wake up from sleep. So I actually changed it back to the default ringtone because I didn't want to ruin the song for me.
I love that.
Sorry, what was your next question?
That was amazing. Favorite music documentary or movie?
Wow, great question. Non-documentary wise, things that come to mind are That Thing You Do is an amazing movie. School of Rock is an amazing movie. I'll give a shout out to one of my dad's films, Music and Lyrics is a movie I absolutely love. There's a lot of really good ones. A documentary that I saw recently, I'll shout out two music documentaries. One is the documentary about the making of We Are the World. I forget the name of it, but it's on Netflix. And I thought like what a random concept for a documentary. Like I'm not that interested in the making of the song We Are the World. So I was like, I don't get why this needs to be documentary. And I found it to be like the most incredible documentary because it's not about, as good as that song is, it's not about the song. It's about the creative and logistical feat of getting all of these people, these artists, these celebrities, and in a lot of cases, these like kind of immature people to all cooperate and make this song in one night together. And I just like, I loved that. And another
The
really funny, yeah,
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say the Bob
Oh,
Dylan
it's
and
amazing.
Stevie Wonder segment alone is worth the price of admission.
It's truly incredible. It's truly incredible. And yeah, we've been lucky enough to become friends with a few people that were part of that process. Like we're good friends with with Greg Gaines, who played the
Yeah.
keyboard on that and is in that documentary a little bit. And we're friends with John Oates, who was standing, I think, right next to Bob Dylan. Yeah, it was fun talking, debriefing it with them after I saw it, being like, you got to tell me what that was like. So that's an awesome one. I also recently watched the documentary about Metallica
Oh, yep.
making their, I forget the name of it, but it's just like this album where they're trying to like work through so many, like, so much drama and personal
Oh, yeah,
conflict in
some
the
kind of
band.
monster. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. And it's truly like an amazing documentary. And it's so emotional and it's also there's so much comedy in it and it's like I think it's required viewing for
Yeah.
anyone who's in a band. Maybe not any musician because it's kind of unique to like if you're in a band with your friends, you have to watch this documentary.
Love it.
Yeah.
And the very last one, Clyde, is what's your favourite non-musical activity or hobby? What keeps you sane outside of the madness that is the music industry?
Yeah, I mean I mentioned it before, but I have a few things. The biggest one is probably like games and puzzles. All my
Yeah.
friends know I'm like obsessed with any kind of puzzle game, riddle. On a long drive, like I love a good riddle. I'm obsessed with playing like Settlers of Catan, the board game, or like doing crossword puzzles or any kind of silly competitive game I'm very into. I'm also a big baseball fan, so I watch so tons of baseball uh and I love watching like movies and TV, spending time with friends and family. Those are
That's
kind of the
right.
main things I think.
No, great. Look, Clyde, I cannot thank you enough. And I just want to do a quick shout out to my co host, Paul, who was the one that quite rightly insisted that number one, I go and check out Lawrence, and B, he's devastated he's not here today. Unfortunately, his day job has gotten in the way. But seeing you guys live and the impact you make on every audience every single night is amazing. And I was one of probably 10% of the audience that was over the age of 45. You attract a huge range of audience ages, but it was just absolutely mind blowing to see how you are making an impact on so many people every single night. And I get so
Thank you
tired of
so
this.
much.
I get so tired of the stereotypes that live music is dead, and particularly pop, rock, funk, soul, whatever. And you are the living embodiment of how that isn't the case. So yeah, really appreciate your time.
Oh man, thank you so much. Which of the shows were you at in Australia
I
out of
was at the
curiosity?
Sydney show.
Oh yeah, that one. I mean, we did two nights, but both of them were great. That was such a fun. That was yeah, such a great audience. Well, I
And was it
really
a hot
appreciate you
night?
saying that.
Was
Yeah,
it a hot
yeah.
night, Clyde? Because to me, it was a damn hot night. I don't know in your experience touring, but
Yeah,
how
no,
you were
no,
feeling the
it
heat, but it
really
was hot.
was. Yeah, no, the Sydney crowds were both really, really great. The whole Australia tour was great, but no, I really appreciate you saying that. And it's funny, every single audience member that we have who's over 40 or over, whatever age always says, "Oh, and I'm your oldest fan," or they always make a comment about how they're such an outlier. But the fact is we have tons of fans of all ages and it's fun to see. And we have tons of fans who are like young children seeing their first concert. And that's one of our favorite things is the diversity across age there. But I really appreciate you saying that and tell your colleague that I appreciate him introducing you, to
Yeah,
us.
no
And thank you for
problems.
having me.
And there we have it. I do hope you enjoyed that. I obviously did because I love Clyde's work and Lawrence the band's work, and some of the film and TV stuff is just plain amazing. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed that. So much to learn out of that. And as Clyde mentioned too, I've tended to go in thinking Lawrence the band's work is all very uplifting stuff, which in its own right is an amazing feat. But he's quite right. There is a lot of light and shade across their four albums. And certainly if you listen closely to the lyrics, which I'm as a musician collaboration I'm guilty of not listening to closely enough. There's a massive amount of light and shade between the music and the lyrics. It's just an amazing collaboration, that band. So cannot recommend highly enough checking out some of their work, and please do check our show notes. We do go to a lot of trouble to make sure you get some great links there to check out. So again, thank you for listening. A big shout out to our gold and silver sponsors, the wonderful musicplayer.com forums, Dave Bryce and the team there. If you'd like talking keyboards in a forum format, which I know I do, that is the place to go. Mike at midnightmastering.com, amazing work if you need mixing or mastering of your own creations. The lovely Tammy Catcher from Tammy's Musical Stew, thank you so much as always, Tammy. And also the brilliant Dewey Evans from the sunny land of Wales. Thank you, sir, for your ongoing support. So we'll be back again in a couple of weeks. Do reach out via editor at keyboardchronicles.com or via all the socials. But otherwise, we'll see you soon and keep on playing.